The Met Gala comes out. It's going to be tonight. Just in case you have forgotten just how out of touch the elites are. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Not a whole lot because it, well, hasn't happened yet. In other news, Nancy Pelosi has gone down to the Ukraine to go back and see what's going on with this, and also to make sure that you guys remember that the Ukraine is actually still happening, and it hasn't stopped just because the mainstream media stopped covering it because, well, we needed to go over midterm stuff and stuff that goes along with that as well. Joe Manchin cuts an ad for a Republican in West Virginia and brags about blocking the Build Back Bullshit bill, so we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. And a Tennessee lawmaker comes right out and says, I would burn books that I don't like. It is going to be all this and more. You're just mad you can't date me. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good morning, Edheads. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar. Man, has it already been an interesting morning, and we're just getting started right now. So I had a large amount of commentary in the live event for the other show tonight because I set that all up, and that link is already out there if you guys want to go and see that for the night show. That's already ready to go with what we're going to be talking about with KTZed later on tonight. I know it was late before I got everything started and up and ready to go, but that was because I got home at 8 o'clock last night because, well, I took a weekend off and went over and spent it with family. So that's what we saw coming off of that, but yeah, I got that up. I got the live event up. The live chat, even though it's not going to be live for another, what the hell, 8 to 5, 8.5 hours? 9.5 hours? Yeah, 9.5 hours. Even though it's not going to be live for another 9.5 hours. It's already been spammed, so don't you guys feel special about that. But, alright, before we do that, though, we've got to get into the news. And we've got a lot to go over here today, but thankfully, there's no work after this today because it's Monday, so we're going to get through it all, and there's quite a bit to go over here. But before we get started, head on over and check out turnsofpagesproductions.com. Turns of Pages Productions, or tsp-prod.com, are going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Once we get started, once we get ourselves going here, you will see great shows such as the Daily Ignoramus, the Breakdown with Breckenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, and the Porch Boys. Also, our friend Britt will be providing video commentary wherever she decides to go with that. And we have a new show that's coming up here at launch as well, so go check that out, turnsofpagesproductions.com. And if you want to help us get launched, we want to make sure that our web developer gets paid because we like our web developer. We do have an active fundraiser right now for $2,000 off of KTZed for startup costs for that. That is web development costs, hosting costs, and everything else. So go and check that out. KTZed.com/turnsofpages101 if you want to go help us out. Help us make sure that Bobby Joe gets paid because, well, let's just say we like Bobby Joe. So that's what we see off of that. Let's go have a look at what's going on in the world of finance for the morning here. The Dow throughout the Friday dropped a not insignificant amount. It lost almost 1,000 points throughout the day yesterday, dropping down to below the 33,000 mark to 32,977.21. Now the futures are looking back up on that again, as investors are looking at finding some cheaper stocks, some stuff that they would normally consider growth. So we do see some good news coming off the futures market if you do have money in retirement tied up into the Dow. So that's what we see off that. But it's getting hard on some of the policies that we're seeing here as well. Some of the financial policies, some of the fiscal policies that are coming out of this administration and the lower administrations at the local and state level. Do not forget to hold those people accountable. It is not all on the presidency. And a lot of these, especially blue state governors, are having just as hard of a time coming out here and saying, hey, you know, people who have upward mobility don't typically vote for Democrats. So that is what we see coming back up off of that. Let's grab and see what the Bitcoin is doing here. Bitcoin over a 5-day mark will go all the way back to the 29th to see the whipsaw that happened over the weekend. Bitcoin dropped itself all the way down to almost 37.5 per coin. It has clawed its way back up to 38,639.10 US dollars. It is $38,639 US dollars and 10 US cents per coin. Over the 5-day, that is up down 612 US dollars. Even 1.56%, but I mean, it's been all over the map here, so we will see what happens. Even flirting almost with 40,500 a coin since the last time we looked. So that's what we see coming up with that. Gas, that is not good news right now. Although the Madison area has dropped a little bit on its top end, it's still staying in its tight little formation here of 366 to 372. I know we were seeing 375 over the weekend here. I fueled up because in order to drive across the state to where my parents live, it takes me almost a full tank of gas. So that's, I'll usually go and fill up. I don't typically fill up because there's only one gas station around here that I fill up all the way at because I typically get an extra 100 gallons out of the tank out of that, 100 miles out of a tank if I use that particular gasoline. But when I stopped over at that specific station, because of the debit card limits that they put on their pumps, $75, that's only 3/4 of a tank for me. I put $120 worth of gas in my truck yesterday, or Saturday rather, so it's getting there. The prices are clawing back up and they are starting to hurt, so we'll see what happens with that and where that goes. But yeah, the Costco in Sun Prairie is at $3.66, otherwise we're $3.67, $3.68, $3.69. And the one station, the BP in Portage, is at $3.72. So that's what we see coming out of our Madison area for that for gas. Your prices may reflect differently based on social issues, based on local issues, based on local taxes, and based on regular local gas prices and transport costs as well. Let's see what IBD has to say for the morning. Dow futures fade as market correction intensifies. Warren Buffett, Tesla rivals, Fed meeting in focus. From Ed Carson. Dow futures turn lower Monday morning. I take back what I said when we were talking about the Dow. Because when I looked at this, when I actually grabbed the article, they were up. So that must have just changed. Dow futures turn lower Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures reversing from modest pre-market gains. Warren Buffett cut Berkshire Hathaway buybacks in Q1 as he decried gambling parlor investing. NIO, XPeng, and Li Auto reported April deliveries plunged, but all eyes will be on this week's Fed meeting. The stock market correction intensified last week as the major indices sold off again, plunging into Friday's close. 2 market rally attempts failed almost as soon as they started. Investors should stay nearly or entirely on the sidelines until the market offers clear signals of a sustained uptrend. Nutrien and Mosaic reported late Monday, with CF Industries due on Wednesday. Nutrien stock fell 5.4% to 98.25 last week, but it is finding support around its 50-day line after a big run. Mosaic stock skidded 6.5% last week, but closed around its 50-day line as well. CF stock rebounded to the end of the week, down just 0.2%, slightly above its rising 50-day line. EV giant BYD will report April sales soon. Tesla, China production and sales will be released later in May. Tesla is on the IBD leaderboard, CF stock is on the IBD 50, CF, Mosaic, and NTR are all in the IBD Big Cap 20. For the Fed meeting, the big event this week for investors is the Federal Reserve meeting on May 3rd to 4th. Policymakers will almost certainly hike interest rates by 50 basis points and are expected to agree to start cutting the central bank's massive balance sheet. Wall Street will find key in on the Fed statement and Fed Chief Jerome Powell's news conference for clues about the future rate hikes. Markets have priced in at least 2 more 50-point Fed rate hikes, but there's a chance that policymakers could go ahead with a 75 basis point increase in the near future. Policymakers are worried about inflation becoming entrenched, even if year-over-year increases may be peaking. Yeah, that's what they've been saying for a year and a half. Oh, it's peaking. It's peaking. It's going to turn. It's going to turn around. It's going to turn around. And now we're at 8.5%. But aggressive rate hikes could derail the economy, especially with China's COVID shutdowns and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. So which way do you want to do it? IBD? Progressives? Do you want to shut us back down with inflation? And bring us up to, and I know it's the hyperbolic statement, but bring it up to the point where the gallon of milk is $20? Or do you want to curb the money printing and the borrowing? Rein it all back in. And then pick up the pieces after that. One of 2 things is going to happen here. There's no happy medium anymore. Alright, on the futures, Dow futures fell less than 0.1% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures dipped 0.2% and NASDAQ futures lost 0.4%. All are off modest pre-market gains. The 10-year Treasury yield rose 3 basis points to 2.92%, close to a recent 3-year high. Crude oil fell nearly 4%. Gold and copper also declined significantly. China demand is a growing concern. A China manufacturing index fell to 47.4%, signaling the sharpest contraction since early 2020, when COVID first hit China. The non-manufacturing gauge was also a 2-year low. Lockdowns in Shanghai and elsewhere have taken a huge toll on China's economy. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, with that, that's where we go with the news off of that. I did want to go back and talk just a bit about this. This isn't exactly news. This is Wall Street Journal opinion, but there were some, and I did some of the math to go with this. It's part of the reason we started late today. There's some truth to what this op-ed is saying. I think this is important to pay attention to. The bitter fruit of inflation. Dow at 29,500 from Arthur Laffer and Stephen Moore. The recent reports showing negative economic growth for the first quarter of the year is a painful reminder of the damage that inflation can do. The current 8.5% inflation rate is the highest in 40 years, but few policymakers or Federal Reserve governors seem to have learned the lesson from the last bout of surging prices, how it started, the economic wreckage it caused, and how we got out of it. We wince when we hear investment gurus arguing that because of inflation often means rising consumer demand, it is good for the economy and stock market. Really, let's rewind to 1974, the early stages of the long stretch of inflation. That year, one of us, Mr. Laffer, wrote on these pages that became a controversial and influential article with the headline, "The Bitter Fruits of Devaluation. Inflation is, of course, a form of currency devaluation." 2 years earlier, the Nixon admin had intentionally devalued the dollar in the mistaken belief that a cheaper dollar would spur growth and employment while reducing the U.S. trade deficit. The Laffer article warned that this policy would wreak economic havoc and cause a stock market train wreck. That's precisely what happened. Those who suffered the most were middle-class workers hit by rising prices, especially for energy surging way ahead of the price increases between 72 and 81 under Nixon, Ford, and Carter. Hourly earnings for workers went from $4 to almost $7, a roughly 70% gain, but after accounting for inflation, workers are getting poorer because of the purchasing power of wages fell by roughly 12%. Is it any wonder that Mr. Ford and Mr. Carter were voted out of the office? That's exactly what workers are facing today, with wages up 5.6% over the last year, but consumer prices up 8.5%. Then, as now, the White House and the Fed said that inflation would be temporary and blamed it on global factors beyond their control. What about the stock market and Americans' wealth? Mr. Laffer's warning of a bear market turned out to be spot on, as the nearby chart shows. The Dow Industrial briefly climbed above 1,000 in the mid-60s and then bottomed out at 777 in the summer of 1982, a 22% reduction in stock. But investors, like worker, care about their real return adjusted for inflation. The industrial average in the S&P 500 fell during that period by more than 70%, the worst 15-year stock performance since the crash of 1929. Reagan and Paul Volcker, who was the Fed chairman at the time, had to sweat the 11% inflation out of the system through a return to a stable dollar regime along with supply-side tax cuts that encouraged the production of more goods and services. That's going to be where the newspapers and the mainstream outlets tell you, tax cuts for the rich! That right there. If we do manage to get into this situation and make that happen, that's exactly how that's going to be sold as. It's tax cuts for the rich! They just want you to be poor! A bull market ensued, with the Dow rising to more than 30,000 between 82 and 22. Over that 40-year period, inflation averaged a benign 3% until the arrival of President Biden and the modern monetary theory crowd. So I want to skip just ahead with this a little bit and talk about where we could be with this. Because they actually had numbers for us. Here's our current warning of bitter fruit. If Mr. Biden doesn't change course in the bear market cycle from the late 60s through the early 80s returns, the Dow Industrial Average would fall from its recent peak of 36,800 to less than 29,500 in 2038. Adjusting for inflation, the index would drop even further. Still think a little inflation, which often metastasizes into a lot of inflation, is good for investors. So, and then of course, if we go back and price that in, because what we're at right now, 32,997. What we're at right now, if I understand Mr. Laffer correctly, would tell us that we're probably closer to the 29,000 mark if we adjust for inflation. These numbers are not good. And we will see what happens with that and where that goes. But of course, money is just not tangible. We have modern monetary theory, and we can just go back and print that back out. Let's get into the main news of the day. We're going to start with a tweet from one William Shatner. Because the elite crowd and Elon Musk are still fighting it out, deciding who's going to be on top and who's going to be where. And the first time I read this, I saw Shatner, and I read this, overacted, and 3 words at a time, and he says, by the way, since it seems to be the latest thing on here, I'm stating that I am staying on Twitter. Besides, I think Elon Musk is adorbs. Also, full disclosure, I'm trying to pitch Elon to hire me as the face of Twitter. Hashtag don't the bird. To which Elon comes back out and replies, "You will always be my captain." And Shatner turned around repeatedly. As soon as Elon replied that back, turned around, went back out in his backyard, looked at the sky and yelled, "Con!" Well, that's what we see off of that. Let's grab one from CNN. The Met Gala is here. The Met Gala will be, of course, tonight. From CNN, Met Gala 2022, everything you need to know about the Gilded Glamour theme. When celebrities take the Met Gala red carpet on May 2nd, there will likely be no shortage of corset boning and bustles. That's because the dress code for this year's event, hosted by the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute, is gilded glamour and white tie, referencing the lavish era of American fashion in the last decades of the 19th century, when industrialization rapidly amplified the country's wealth gap. The Met Gala accompanies the second part of the Costume Institute's exhibition in America, an anthology of fashion which opened last September and guided the previous event's attire. And while there's seemingly always a degree of flexibility when A-list attendees interpret the theme, what's more American than a t-shirt head to toe, said Kim Kardashian, after she took to the red carpet in an all-black spectral Balenciaga look. This prompt will give guests the chance to indulge their most decadent aspirations. It is very embellished, very exaggerated, very structured. Fashion historian and curator Kate Straston said of the Gilded Age style in a video interview, "It feels so upholstered compared to the way that we think about dress now." The Gilded Age was a 30-year period during which industrialists and real estate magnates saw their fortunes ascend to staggering heights. So basically the people who are going to be at the Met Gala. Thanks to the rapid expansion of trains, factories, and urban centers, famous family names including Frick, Astor, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Vanderbilt shaped the country's infrastructure, and the socialites of the area, including Carolyn Schemerhorn Astor and Alva Vanderbilt, ruled New York society. For the elite, fashion became a maximal, with lace and crystal trimmings, and even bird wings. Milliners in the area used so many feathers, wings, and stuffed dead birds in their hats that it caused the formation of the Audubon Society for the Protection of Birds. In 1895, according to the organizers, under the influence of the derriere-enhancing gowns, American women wore complicated undergarments, including corsets, stuffed shoulder cushions, bustle pads, crinolines, a form of structured petticoat, and even steel springs to achieve the right shape. Though the silhouettes were simplified by the end of the century, menswear was highly formal too, with the newly popular tuxedo in the 1880s becoming the standard dress for high-flying gentlemen. With a focus on American designers at the gala, some of them will no doubt rise to the grandeur of the challenge, like Moschino's Jeremy Scott, whose opulent takes on historical references have included sending 18th century-inspired panniers down the runway. Celebrities may also call upon Christian Siriano or Pierre Moss for their over-the-top, highly structural couture pieces, Or look back to the vintage Alexander McQueen designs from across the pond that employed nod to the era, like caged crinolines. Corsets have already infiltrated the red carpet lately, with Olivia Rodrigo, Doja Cat, and Dua Lipa all sporting them at the Grammys last month. So, there you go. They're going to go back and tell you about the fact that, hey, this is what it looked like while the rich, meanwhile we're rich, got richer, and the poor got poor. That's you. You guys are the poor, and you're getting poor. And from the Daily Wire, on the same theme, they're begging for the pitchforks, aren't they? Met Gala theme announcement raises eyebrows from Virginia Kruta. The annual Met Gala is coming up on Monday, May 2nd. And this year's announced theme, Gilded Glamour, has social media buzzing about just how tone-deaf the organizers must be. The Met Gala returns on Monday. The fundraiser for the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Costume Institute draws pop culture's biggest stars to its red carpet. The true event of the evening, the Associated Press reporting, this year's theme, Gilded Glamour. According to the Associated Press's report, the 2022 gala will be hosted by Regina King, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and Lin-Manuel Miranda. Vogue magazine's Anna Wintour will be running the show, as she has for decades, joined by honorary co-chairs designer Tom Ford and Instagram's Adam Mosseri. The gala is always a who's who of the richest and most famous from the Hollywood fashion, sports, politics, and every other possible arena. And while the glitz and glamour are kind to the point, a number of critics wondered whether saying out loud was a little too on the nose. Gilded Glamour, they're begging for the pitchforks, aren't they? Real Clear Politics co-founder and president Tom Bevan tweeted. I don't see the word equity here anywhere, Washington Free Beacon contributor Noah Pollock said. Amy Curtis joined a number of Twitter users who referenced the Hunger Games, adding, "We are living in Panem." Mark Hemingway, senior writer for Real Clear Investigations, noted that the timing of the event made the optics even worse. The WHCA and Met Gala are just a few days apart, right after today's economic news, just absolutely perfect optics. For all involved, he tweeted. Impeccable timing, David Burge agreed. So yes, they're coming with a theme going back to the end of the 19th century, whereas CNN came right out and said, when the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. When the magnates ruled the world and made everybody suffer to make sure that they could come back and have these big parties like this over and over again. While the rest of us sat and ate cake. The cake is alive, by the way. Right after the economy contracted 1.4%, and the Dow continues to be back in the tank, wiping out more and more retirement funds for everybody. I was just informed about how somebody close to me, how that person's retirement fund has taken a hit because of where everything is going right now. But yes, bring out the pitchforks, get the hay, because that's what they think about us. And speaking of things that are completely out of touch, the Correspondents' Dinner was this weekend. Biden jokes Trump was a horrible plague in remarks at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Well, let's listen to unreliable sources first. The WHCA president previews the Correspondents' Dinner. So let's see what Portnoy has to say before they got started, and then we'll go and look at a review of some of the things that actually happened on the floor.
The White House Correspondents' Dinner returns next Saturday after a 2-year COVID hiatus. And it's newsworthy because President Biden is set to speak at the event, resuming the tradition after Donald Trump famously boycotted the so-called Nerd Prom. Trevor Noah is the headliner. Media outlets throw parties all weekend long. It almost feels like a return to normal, but of course there will still be COVID questions. Here to answer those and more, Stephen Portnoy, president of the White House Correspondents Association. He's a CBS News Radio White House correspondent. So how do you hold a big party when there's still this virus all around the world?
Brian, months ago, our board had it in mind that we would approach this carefully. We decided months ago that we would have a blanket level of testing for all 2,620 guests at our dinner. Even before what happened at the Gridiron earlier this month, we decided that every person who came to our dinner would have to have two things: a ticket in one hand and proof that they have taken a same-day negative COVID test in the other. And that's a strategy that so far has been endorsed by the nation's leading health officials. So
that's true.
We're optimistic that we'll do what we can next week to avoid spread.
So it's going to be funny, it's going to be serious. It's a big old schmooze fest, sometimes between politicians and reporters. There's often criticism of how cozy this event seems. So what's your defense of the dinner? Why does it matter?
Look, we've been having this dinner since 1921. Presidents have been attending since 1924, with only one exception, to demonstrate a mutual respect for the First Amendment. And that's what I'm focused on. You know, in addition to the comedy, we will have Trevor Noah. I'm sure the president will have some fun things to say, but I'm going to be focused, and my remarks will be deadly serious, talking about threats that journalists face here at home and all around the world. It will be paying respects to the journalists who have been killed, covering
threats that journalists face here at home. The orange man was mean to Jesus fucking Christ. And this is another one of those big parts where they'll tell you right off the fact that they're completely out of touch with what the American people want. And it's shit like this, by the way, which makes me want to just empty every piece of savings that I have, which still won't cover the costs over there, to make Turns the Pages Productions get started here, because this is the mainstream media going out and colluding with the Democratic government to make sure that, you know what the Democratic government wants you to know. I got criticized in a tirade that's in the live event for tonight's show. I got criticized for all you do is read mainstream news outlets. Yes, I am telling you what they want you to know and reading between the lines of what's there. We are criticizing the mainstream media by using them exclusively as a source, and criticizing the people that tell you, that worship this kind of media, of the people who are going to this White House Correspondents' Dinner, by taking away their ability to say, oh, all you do is read from the Washington Free Beacon and the Daily Stormer and all these conservative blog sites. You don't use real news. Well, go through my slate of news and check what it is that I'm using. Because mostly it's going to be the people who are going to bullshit events like this. Reading on from here, President Biden took a dig at his predecessor Saturday at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, while also joking about the press, the GOP, and continued existence of the event altogether. I'm really excited to be here tonight with the only group of Americans with a lower approval rating than I have, Biden said during his initial comments. We have a horrible plague. Excuse me. We have a horrible plague followed by 2 years of COVID, he said. Just imagine if my predecessor had come to this dinner this year. Now, that would have been really a real coup if that occurred. Now, I don't have a video of this that I know of right now, but yeah, that's about the most out of touch comment that you have. The event marked Biden's first appearance at the widely attended Washington event since taking office, as the first president to address the dinner's attendees in 6 years. He stressed his support for democracy and the free press. Yeah, okay, as long as they're saying good things about him. I'm sure he'd have something to say about this channel. That's not the free press, though, man. You're just a guy in a living room. Saturday night's dinner, which took place inside the Washington Hilton, and was expected... Oh, why didn't they use the Trump Hotel in Washington, I wonder? And was expected to host more than 2,500 guests, returned in full force after a 2-year hiatus due to the pandemic. The event's program was headlined by Daily Show host Trevor Noah and featured Biden delivering comedic remarks. The White House Correspondents Association, which hosts the annual black tie event, honored several journalists and their contributions. Biden also poked fun at his age, joking that he remembers when the annual dinner began, with President Coolidge speaking in 1924. I had just been elected to the United States Senate, he said. Ha 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 ha! The president had said that when he was elected, Noah was on a show called Biden America's New Dad, to which he said, "Let me tell you something, pal. I'm flattered that anyone would call me a new anything." Inside the gala, negative tests were required for entry and masks were voluntary, just as they are throughout most of Washington. But there have been growing concerns that Saturday night's event could lead to COVID cases among partygoers after dozens of attendees, including some of Biden's cabinet officials who attended a different Washington party, the Gridiron Dinner, tested positive weeks ago. Cases of COVID in Washington are now steady after rising following the decline of the Omicron variant's wave. But Dr. Fauci, the patron saint of medicine, the president's chief medical advisor, decided to bow out of Saturday's dinner after a personal risk assessment. "Yeah, if they see me here, somebody might say something bad about me. I can't go here. There's going to be comedy. In general, the risk is low, but I made a personal assessment. I'm 81 years old, and if I get infected, I have a much higher risk," Fauci said earlier this week. Saturday's event came after two top Biden officials recently tested positive for the pink coat fucking pox. That is, of course, Harris and Kate Bedingfield. But Biden's decision to still attend the dinner, White House Press Secretary Red-Haired Bobblehead said earlier this week, was a risk assessment and a decision he made on a personal basis, and Biden was intent on going. She said to express his support for free press, First Lady Jill Biden also attended. So, there you go, your White House Correspondents' Dinner. Rich people gathering together to have a rich people's dinner and tell you how much they hate you and how much they like the DC elite. Let's grab one from our friends over here at NPR. President Biden mocks Trump at White House Correspondents' Dinner. From Robbie Griffiths. And we also like to mock President Trump here, but we can't do so unless you donate to us, because your taxpayer subsidy is not enough to keep us going. So hit that donate button and make sure you are giving all of your money, our money, comrade, over to NPR, so we can tell you how much better off you are if you will own nothing and like it. NPR, National Progressive Radio, never printing reality. Let's see what they have to say. President Biden addressed the White House Correspondents Association on Saturday night. For the first time, a president has spoken at the event in 6 years. The event was canceled during the pandemic, and the former president shunned the event while he was in office. The president joked about criticism he has faced in his first 15 months of power. And the press, the opposition, and Trump. Just imagine if my predecessor came to this dinner this year. Now that would have been a real coup. He also made light of the Let's Go Brandon slogan, which is used by opposition to swear at the president. Republicans seem to support one fellow. Some guy named Brandon, Biden said. He's having a really good year. I'm happy for him. Biden was addressing an audience of 2,600 people, including journalists, government officials, and celebrities. Making light of recently leaked comments from the House of Representatives Minority Leader, Biden said, There's nothing I can say about the GOP that Kevin McCarthy hasn't already put on tape. He also had a dig at Fox News. I know there are a lot of questions on whether we should gather here tonight because of COVID. Well, we're here to show the country that we're getting through this pandemic. Plus, everyone has to prove that they're fully vaccinated and boosted. Just contact your favorite Fox News reporter. They're all here. Vaccinated and boosted. What a disingenuous cunt. Oh my God, I can't stand this guy. Fox News is doing something. That means that you should do it too. Look, if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. A journalist shouldn't be the person that's telling you what your medical decision should be. Neither should a president. You and your doctor are the only two people who should be in together making this decision for you. I got on Aaron Rupar about this. What was it? What was he even said? I can't remember. I can probably find it, though, in my mentions or my profile. Yeah. Aaron Rupar, should go without saying, but do not take medical advice from Elon Musk. And, I mean, I'm not going to take it from Substack journalists or mainstream propagandists either. Me and my doctor. That's who makes medical decisions for what goes in my body. And even then, it's more me than my doctor. In addition to speeches from Biden and Trevor Noah, the event had skits from talk show host James Corden and comedian Bill Eichner and Biden himself. "Thank you for having me here," Noah said to Biden, and I was a little confused on why me, but then I was told that you get your highest approval ratings when a biracial African guy is standing next to you. Oh, jeez. Really? He really said that. Wow. As well as jokes, Biden praised the role of journalism in American democracy. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that you, the free press, matter more than you ever did in the last century, he said. You are the guardians of truth. And I tell you, and of course they've been caught coordinating with the White House to tell what the world is. You're the guardians of truth, and I get to tell you what the truth is, man. Come on. God, I hate these disingenuous people. From the Daily Wire. Trevor Noah, we'll get into some of his jokes here. Trevor Noah says DeSantis is trying to outmaneuver Trump for 2024. I see you, Ron. I see you, player. From Mary Margaret Olahan. There's some video for it. Trevor Noah suggested that Ron DeSantis is trying to outmaneuver former President Trump for the 2024 presidential election. The comedian headlined the White House Correspondents Association Gala Saturday evening at the Washington Hilton Hotel in D.C., where he leveled shots at the press and politicians alike. What a room this is! Everyone is here tonight. We've got politicians, we've got the media, we've got celebrities, basically anyone who has been Jeffrey Epstein's island. This is an exclusive event. Oh, that's why I can't get invited. Because I'm not rich enough to get to Epstein Island. Many big names here tonight, he continued. One of my favorites, Ron DeSantis, is here. I'm actually surprised that he found the time. You know, he's been so busy trying to outmaneuver Trump for 2024. I see you, Ron. Noah told the Florida governor, who has thus far steered clear of saying whether or not he would run in 24. I see you, player. I see what you've been doing, blaming Trump for the lockdowns, distancing yourself from the vaccines that Trump created with his own two hands. Noah imitated Trump's voice, saying, "Nobody knew how to make vaccines until I made them. Beautiful, beautiful vaccines. Nobody knew how, not even Fauci." The comedian continued, "But Ron is playing it coy, man. He won't even tell people if he got the booster. Or as they say in Florida, don't ask, don't tell. Am I right, Ron? I see you, Ron." Let's watch.
Very classy. Very classy. But man, what a room this is, huh? Look at this room. Everyone is here tonight. We've got politicians, huh? We've got the media, we've got celebrities, basically anyone who's been to Jeffrey Epstein's island. This is an exclusive event. In fact, coming in, I heard Meghan McCain telling the bouncer, "Do you know who my father was?" And they were like, "You have a ticket, you can just come in." But she insisted on telling them who her father was anyway. And I'll tell you, as somebody coming from Africa, I mean, I've just got to say, this is so exciting, you know, to be at this swanky party full of Washington's most powerful people. You know, it's not as exciting as Madison Cawthorn made it sound, but still very sexy. Very, very sexy. There's many big names here tonight. Yeah, one of my favorites, Ron DeSantis, is here. Yeah. Oh, man, I'm actually surprised that he found the time. You know, he's been so busy trying to outmaneuver Trump for 2024. I see you, Ron. I see you, player. Yeah, I've seen what you've been doing, blaming Trump for the lockdowns, distancing yourself from the vaccines that Trump created with his own two hands. Nobody knew how to make vaccines until I made them. Beautiful, beautiful vaccines. Nobody knew how. Not even Fauci. But Ron is playing it coy, man. He won't even tell people if he got the booster. Yeah. Or as they say in Florida, don't ask, don't tell. Am I right? I see you, Ron. You see, what I like about Ron DeSantis is like if Trump was the original Terminator, DeSantis is like the T-1000. You know, you're smarter than him. You're slicker than him. You can walk down ramps. Yeah. Because you see, no, Trump said he won the election, but everyone was just able to look at the numbers and see that he was wrong. That's why Ron DeSantis is one step ahead. First, you ban the math textbooks. Then, nobody knows how to count the votes. Boom! My man! Ha ha ha! What a...
And really, honestly, I mean, it's the disingenuousness of this all. And I say that word a lot, disingenuous, because, well, let's be frank, that's what this is. And this is, of course, Trevor Noah trying to run back out and trying to get ahead of the educational thing again because, well, let's remember what happened in Virginia, where McAuliffe got fucking spanked over education. And Trevor Noah is trying to run back out with Ron DeSantis and trying to get back ahead of, oh, well, it's Republicans are, see, Republicans are the ones who, they're the ones who want to do this, and they're against education after all. They just want to ban textbooks and take away education. It's all Republicans, don't you know? Completely disingenuous. I can't believe I got that accurate on Trevor Noah's impression of Donald Trump. I don't mean to toot my own horn with that, but, you know, toots motherfucking McCoots here. From The Blaze. Not enough memory to open this page. Watch Best and Worst Jokes from Stopping Tech Censorship. Best and Worst Jokes from the jam-packed White House Correspondents' Dinner. Biden needles Trump and DeSantis. From Paul Saka. The Correspondents' Dinner took place in D.C. on Saturday night. This is the first WHCD since 2020 because of the pandemic. The packed indoor event at the Washington Hilton was hosted by Daily Show host Trevor Noah and attended by journalists, politicos, and celebrities. President Biden and First Lady Biden were also in attendance. The WHCD, which is also referred to as the Nerd Prom, began with a video of pre-recorded skit, with the late show host James Corden filling in for the White House press secretary red-haired bobblehead. Corden is most concerned about President Biden's opinion on the budding romance between Kardashian and Davidson, who were in attendance at the WHCD. Bobblehead provides Corden with talking points for the White House press conference, such as war with Russia, bad, and CDC, good. Biden then took the podium and addressed the dismal approval rating by giving a special thanks to the 42% of you who actually applauded. He then mocked journalists as the only group of Americans with a lower approval rating than I had. Biden noted that in 2022, the Correspondents' Dinner was the first time a sitting U.S. president attended the event since 2016 because former President Trump boycotted the WHCD during his presidency. Biden insinuated that the Trump presidency was a plague. All right, let's watch some of this here.
A special thanks to the 42% of you actually applauded. I'm really excited to be here tonight with the only group of Americans with a lower approval rating than I have. That's hard to say after what we just saw. This is the first time the president attended this dinner in 6 years. It's understandable. We had a horrible plague, followed by 2 years of COVID.
These people got their training from all the late night television hosts. I can't, Stephen Colbert, that's the one of them. I was about to say, I can't think of his name, but Steve Colbert, that's where they got their training from. He said Trump was bad. He said Trump was a plague.
Just imagine if my predecessor came to this dinner this year. Now that would really have been a real coup if that occurred.
Come on, laugh, you bastards.
But
Biden took aim at possible 2024 GOP presidential candidate and current Florida Governor Ron DeSantis over his handling of Disney's fight against the parental rights and education law. While flubbing Ronald Reagan's iconic Tear Down This Wall speech from '87, Biden declared Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear this wall down. Today, Republicans say tear down Mickey Mouse's house." Let's listen.
But I'm not worried about the midterms. I'm not worried about them. We may end up with more partisan gridlock, but I'm confident we can work it out during my remaining 6 years in the presidency.
Man, you don't even have 6 years left in life.
And folks, I'm not really here to roast the GOP. That's not my style. Besides, there's nothing I can say about the GOP that Kevin McCarthy hasn't already put on tape. And, you know, at the same time, a lot of people say the Republican Party is too extreme, too divisive, too controlled by one person. They say that's not your father's Republican Party. Ronald Reagan said, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear this wall down." Today's Republicans say, "Tear down Mickey Mouse's house." And pretty soon they'll be storming Cinderella's castle, you can be sure of it. But Republicans seem to support one fella, some guy named Brandon. He's having a really good year, and I'm kind of happy for him. Let me conclude with a serious word.
Trevor Noah began his monologue calling on the hypocrisy of press members attending the packed indoor event. "It's my great honor to be speaking tonight at the nation's most distinguished super spreader event," Noah said. "For real, what are we doing here? None of you learned anything from the gridiron dinner? Nothing?"
Great, I got a promise I will not be going to jail. I'll switch things up now. Let's see how we do this. How's everybody doing tonight? You guys good? Everyone good? First of all, thank you so much, Steve. Good evening, Mr. President, First Lady, members of the media, and all the men relieved that Ronan Farrow isn't here tonight. It is my great honor to be speaking tonight at the nation's most distinguished super spreader event. No, for real, people, what are we doing here? Let's be honest, what are we doing? Like, did none of you learn anything from the gridiron dinner? Nothing, huh? Like, do you read any of your own newspapers? I mean, I expect this from Sean Hannity, but the rest of you, what are you doing here? You guys spent the last 2 years telling everyone the importance of wearing masks and avoiding large indoor gatherings. Then the second someone offers you a free dinner, you all turn into Joe Rogan, huh? I mean, Dr. Fauci dropped out. That should have been a pretty big sign. Fauci thought it was too dangerous to come tonight. Pete Davidson thinks it's okay. And we all went with Pete. Okay. All right, then.
Washington Post reporter Jada Yuan said the jam-packed room is like a horror film. "Literally getting trapped between tables," Yuan wrote on Twitter. "Fear of breathing near people, but people are everywhere. Creeping sense that you're the only one who knows this is insane. Then don't go." Noah mocked the president for historic inflation that is causing financial ruin, which garnered the laughter from everyone in the audience.
You know, I think ever since you've come into office, things are really looking up. You know, gas is up, rent is up, food is up, everything. No, it really has been a tough first year for you, Mr. President. And sure.
Noah needled former CNN anchor Chris Cuomo over his cozy on-air relationship with his older brother.
If it's true, congratulations to Jen on your big career change. But you know, moving to MSNBC is going to be a big switch up for you, because right now your current job is to make the Biden administration look as good as possible, you know, at all costs. Now you're going to be at MSNBC and you're going to have to, you'll be fine, actually. No, sorry. I don't even know why I apologize. By the way, MSNBC, can I just say you guys are doing great work? You know, I love watching your shows. You know, when Trump was in office, your shows were all about how bad he was. And now that Biden's in office, your shows are all about how bad Trump was. Consistency is important. We appreciate that. We really do. Also, shout out to Joe and Mika. Yeah.
Okay, that was fun. I will give credit where credit is due. That was funny.
I love you guys. Most adorable HR violation in town. I love it. So adorable. What?
Let's see. Dr. Biden kept her teaching career. Everyone thinks it's because she loves teaching. It's because she's still paying off her... No, Jesus.
More importantly, First Lady Dr. Jill Biden is here, everybody. Give it up for her. You know, interesting fact, even as First Lady, Dr. Biden continued her teaching career. Yeah, the first time a presidential spouse has ever done so. Ever. Congratulations. Now, you might think it's because she loves teaching so much, but it's actually because she's still paying off her student debt. I'm sorry about that, Jill. Yeah, I guess you should have voted for Bernie.
And the last one. And we'll head out of here. Well, I think we'll move off this topic. I'll skip this one because it's... No, actually, I do want to grab this one because that is a little bit of the reaction to this here. But here is Trevor Noah taking a shot at the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. Please be careful leaving tonight. We all know this administration doesn't handle evacuations well. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
All right, so that's what we see off that. And we're not done. Digital Dunkirk organizer blasts Trevor Noah over Afghan evacuation joke while people are still stranded. I think that was the point. For Virginia Kruta, Digital Dunkirk organizer Alex Plitzas criticized comedian Trevor Noah after the latter used his platform at the White House Correspondents' Dinner to crack a joke about the Biden admin's disastrous exit from Afghanistan. Please be careful leaving tonight. We all know this administration doesn't handle evacuations well. Alex tweets, I finally understand how the too soon response to a joke. There are a lot of people who were left behind and are suffering after we made a promise to them as a nation. We are not done. I think that was kind of the point of the joke. Plitzas, an Army veteran who served in both Iraq and Afghanistan, was instrumental in a massive civilian-led rescue operation known as Digital Dunkirk, so named because of the similarities to the massive civilian rescue operations that took place at Dunkirk between May 26 and June 4th of 1940. Plitzas has worked tirelessly with other civilians and intelligence operators to aid American citizens and Afghan allies in their escape from the Taliban after Biden ordered all American troops to leave Afghanistan, and that work is still ongoing. Plitzas was not alone in his criticism over the joke, however. Congressman Peter Meyer was not amused either. And notably, Meyer went over there to try to get more people on the plane. Aha, that's a great joke at the expense of the tens of thousands of Afghan allies we left to rot at the WHCOS. Wants us to forget because that's the reason why Biden's favorables and unfavorables are absolutely dismal, but great singer, much laughs, Meyer wrote in response. Leaving Americans to die on their own in Afghanistan is just a joke to those who think that they're better than you, another commented. GOP Rapid Response Director Tommy Pigott added 13 people died trying to save people from his mistakes. So, yeah, there you go. Nice crack at that particular joke, which, again, I respect what these people are saying, but that was the point of the joke. To remind people of the fact that, hey, there's still shit going on in here, and this... I don't think Trevor Noah is as pro-Biden as a lot of people seem to think that he is. I think Trevor is pretty anti-Biden from some of the things that I've seen from him. But that's what we had off of that. The Met Gala and the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And Shatner. How out of touch the elites are with the rest of us. Let's keep going. Go talk about the Ukraine. We haven't talked about the Ukraine in a while. An article here and there. But for the most part, we haven't had a block like this for quite a while. From NBC, to start with, Pelosi leads congressional delegation to meet with Zelensky in Kiev. From Jason Abruzis and Max Berman. House Speaker Skeletor led a congressional delegation to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev. Skeletor is the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit Ukraine during the war, with the surprise visit adding to the growing momentum behind the West's support for the country's fight against Russia. The most avid support of Nazis I've ever seen in my life. The trip comes as Moscow refocused military campaign in Ukraine's east struggles to make significant gains, and as Kiev's allies step up with increasing military supplies, with both sides appearing to be settling in for a prolonged conflict. Oh, what are you thinking? Maybe, I don't know, 20 years, perhaps? Is that where we're gonna go with this? A 20-year conflict? Maybe multiple generations of people who weren't born yet going over to Ukraine to serve if the U.S. gets to pull into it. We're not visiting to say thank you for your fight for freedom, Pelosi said during a meeting with Ukrainian officials, according to a video posted to Zelensky's official Telegram account early Sunday. Your fight is a fight for everyone. And so our commitment is to be there until the fight is done. Zelensky said I'm very grateful for powerful signal of support. This shows the United States today is right leader in strong support for Ukraine during war against aggression of Russian Federation, Zelensky said. Those accompanying Pelosi on the trip, which had not been previously announced, included Jason Crow of Colorado, Jim McGovern of Massachusetts, Greg Meeks of New York, and Adam Schiff of California. The trip is the second major visit from American officials in the span of a week. Blinken and Austin met with Zelensky last Sunday and made fresh promises of military and diplomatic support. We are going to war in that place at some point here. It is going to happen. If Pelosi's over there, if Schiff is over there, and if Blinken and Austin are over there, something's happening. Something is happening. And it's going to be your children that are going. Your children and grandchildren are going to be the ones that are going. And your tax dollar is going to fund it. Aren't you excited? Alright, from CNN. Pelosi makes unannounced trip to Kiev, becoming the highest-ranking U.S. official to meet with Zelensky since the war began. But we can see some of the video of that trip here. So that's the reason I'm grabbing this one, because, you know, they're not going to tell us anything different. Let's start with this.
It's been about a week now since the last time a senior delegation came here to Kyiv from the United States to meet with President Zelensky and his administration. Last week, of course, it was Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. This week, it is a U.S. congressional delegation that was led by none other than Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. She was joined by several other senior members of Congress. This was an unannounced visit that we found out about from a tweet from President Zelensky. President Zelensky putting out a video of this meeting where you can see him greeting Speaker of the House Pelosi, as well as these other members of Congress who joined her. Zelensky in a meeting thanking Pelosi for what he called the United States' strong support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia, calling the United States a, quote, leader in the effort to support Ukraine. Meanwhile, in that meeting, we heard from Speaker Pelosi herself. Here's a little bit of what she had to say.
We believe that we are visiting you to say thank you for your fight for freedom, that we are on a frontier of freedom, and that your fight is a fight for everyone. And so our commitment is to be there for you until the fight is done.
And so that is Speaker Pelosi just continuing with the same showing of public support that you have heard recently from President Biden. Remember, it was just a few days ago that Biden requested some $33 billion in additional aid from Congress. That funding would go towards a mixture of humanitarian aid as well as the kind of heavy weaponry that Ukraine has been asking for a long time, that it says it desperately needs in its continued fight against Russia all over this country. Pelosi, of course, would play a major role in getting that request through Congress, getting it turned into a legislative package that President Biden could sign, and they could send that kind of aid and weaponry here to Ukraine, as President Zelensky is hoping for. Interestingly, this trip did follow the kind of security norms that we're used to with these high-level VIP trips to areas with a security risk. This announcement of her visit coming after the meeting was over, which is generally what we see in these kinds of visits. Of course, that didn't happen last week when Secretary of State Blinken and Secretary of Defense Austin came here. President Zelensky actually announced their visit before they arrived, but this time that not being the case, both sides announcing the visit after it had already concluded, with Speaker of the House Pelosi saying that this...
All right. First thing, pro tip, is that Bang energy drink is not meant to be breathed. Do not attempt that at home because it hurts like hell. And second, I mean, when we look back at this and we see off of this, this is one of these things, too, where I've said that with the Ukrainian thing, because why did we not see this coming? First and foremost, because that was the basis of impeachment 1.0. That was the basis of the Hunter laptop story. That was the basis of everything that went along with this. Erica Marshmallow, who was totally not the whistleblower. And everything that went around this had to do with what was happening in Ukraine. And really, I do think that there were more people that had their hands in the cookie jar than this. And again, that President Biden had to be installed to make sure that he had executive privilege for life, for him and his family, because of trade secrets or top secrets or anything else like that. I think Pelosi had her hand in the cookie jar too. I really do.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming. Pleasure to meet you.
Jim McGovern from Massachusetts. Nice to meet you.
Thank you very much. You're here.
President,
Hi
good
again.
to see you again. Yes.
You're welcome. Hi. Jason Crow from Colorado. Nice to meet you.
Adam Schiff from California.
You're very welcome.
Honored to meet you.
But we didn't.
Я вам вдячний за, по-перше, за цей сигнал потужної підтримки України, потужної підтримки Сполучених Штатів, народу Сполучених Штатів, Конгресу і двопалатної підтримки, і двопартійної. Цей сигнал високо ціную я як президент, наша команда і народ України. Це говорить про те, що Сполучені Штати є сьогодні дійсно лідером потужної підтримки України в часи війни проти агресії Російської Федерації. І
Unfortunately, I can't speak anything in the Cyrillic tongue, so I have no idea what he's saying off that. But there's their meeting. Let's grab one from the Blaze. Pelosi led a congressional delegation to meet with Zelensky in Ukraine, vows to be there for you until the fight is done. Oh man, that still hurts. House Speaker Pelosi led a congressional delegation to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky this weekend. This trip makes Pelosi the highest-ranking U.S. official to visit Ukraine during the ongoing Russian invasion. NBC News reported that to many, this trip came as a surprise and that it provided further evidence of the West's growing support for Ukraine's fight against Russia. The trip comes as Russian forces continue to refocus their military campaign in the eastern regions of Ukraine and struggle to make any significant territorial gains, while Ukraine's allies increase their material support of the invaded nation by sending increasing quantities of military supplies. So, again, a monthly supply of money and supplies that's worth more and more every month. Once again, does that not sound like blackmail to you? Despite the influx of material aid the Ukrainian military is receiving, the Russians are not backing down, and it appears that both sides of the conflict are preparing for the conflict to go on for much, much longer. During a meeting with Ukrainian officials, Pelosi said that our subscription for McAfee has expired. This is why we don't use the Blaze anymore. Because they keep doing that shit over and over again. Zelensky said he's very grateful for a powerful signal of support. So, there you go. Pelosi over in the Ukraine. What else do we have? Posobiec tweets out, AP, Ukraine hunts down traitors posting online in support of Russia. Because they don't have freedom of speech over there. They can't say that their government sucks. Okay, before we go too much further into this, I want to say that I am no fan of Putin and Russia and the communist government of Russia. But this right here should be all that you need to know as to why the Ukraine is not your friend either. This right here should be all you need to see to understand what Ukraine wants to do, what Ukraine wants the world to look like, and hell, what people like Nancy Pelosi want the world to look like over in our country too.
Все хорошо. Все, зафиксировал, можешь посмотреть.
Да, я
на меня.
Поддерживал.
Смотри на меня внимательно.
Но я теперь уже не...
Это читай.
Ну, я поддерживал много, да.
Ты поддерживал Путина, да, и поддерживаешь армию России. Как-то ты не хорошо о флаге Украины, да, отзываешься? Да?
Извините. Ну да, это много ставил, я вам говорил. Ну, я уже это даже передумал все это.
Сегодня, да? После
Прямо
нашего прихода,
сейчас.
да?
Ну,
Прямо сейчас, да?
Ну, понятно.
Да? Так, собирай вещи, одеваемся. Собирай вещи, одевайся.
А що буде?
Нічого не буде.
To the gulag with you!
Це буде відповідно чинного законодавства України. Не знаешь,
Ну, не надо там бить.
конечно, никто тебя не будет. Все, мы ж не расширились. Обулся? Все, погнали. Забери его. Не-не-не, не, все по закону, он будет, все с ним будет хорошо.
Yeah, he'll be fine. Absolutely.
Дуже швидкий темп задають наші Збройні Сили, ми мусимо їм відповідати і надавати.
So if their armed forces are in there hunting down their own citizens for saying the wrong thing, who's on the front lines in Mariupol and Kiev and everything else like that? Who's on those areas, I wonder? I think that if you're really as bad off as the mainstream media tries to tell us, you don't have the people to expend to go out and go on these little fucking field trips. And I keep seeing the troops like, he'll be fine, he'll be fine. No, he will be fine, he will be fine. Yes. People who affiliate with the political party that the Azovs affiliate with are usually fine when the secret police come and take them away. They usually turn out fine, right? 6 million, something like that. From the Hill, Adam Kinzinger, who's trying desperately to hold on to some sort of semblance of power somewhere. Kinzinger introduces AUMF to defend Ukraine if Russia uses chemical, biological, nuclear weapons. This is the first resolution that's gone through Congress that says that we will put military force on the ground in Ukraine. Pay attention to this. From Michael Schnell. Adam Kinzinger on Sunday introduced an authorization for use of military force resolution that, if passed, would authorize President Biden to utilize U.S. forces to defend Ukraine if Russia uses chemical, biological, nuclear weapons against its neighbors. You know, like all those chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons in Saudi Arabia and Iraq. Kinzinger announced the joint resolution during an interview with the moderator, Margaret Brennan, on CBS's Face the Nation. Asked if he thought that it was too soon to be discussing potential use of force in Ukraine, Kinzinger said, "No, I don't. We are going to fucking war, guys. Because they will manufacture whatever weapon of mass destruction they need to get themselves to war." And by the way, if you don't see a problem with the fact that it's a Bushite Republican at the front of this, all is lost. I don't think we need to be using force in Ukraine right now. I just introduced the AUMF, an authorization for the use of military force, giving the president basically congressional leverage for permission to use it if WMDs, nuclear, biological, or chemical, are used in Ukraine, Kinzinger said. The congressman said the AUMF would give Biden leverage, adding that the resolution could serve as a deterrent to President Putin. Raytheon is fucking drooling right now. We are going to war. Doesn't compel the president to do it. That is being held up and propped up by Raytheon Technologies and more. It just says that if it is used, that he has the leverage. It gives him, a better flexibility, but it also is a deterrent to Vladimir Putin, Kinzinger said. If Putin wants to escalate with the West, he will. It's easy for him to do it, and I think right now we're doing what we're doing with supplying, with Lend-Lease, with financing, is right, he added. Oh my God. Have you raised your children to be good military citizens? Because there's a new war for them to fight. The Illinois Republican said the U.S. should be ready if the situation unfolds in which America must get involved. Prior to World War II, there were moments nobody ever wanted to be involved in, eventually came to realize that they had to. I hope that we don't get to that point here, but we should be ready if we do, he said. We are going. We are going. As soon as I saw AUMF this morning, I said, that's it. We're in this. From Newsweek, a little bit of an update to go with that. Kinzinger pushes red line resolution for U.S. force if Russia deploys WMDs. Representative Kinzinger, an Illinois Republican, announced Sunday that he has introduced a resolution to use military force against Russia if the U.S. adversary chooses to use weapons of mass destruction in its internationally condemned war against the Ukraine. Concerns have mounted from Ukrainian, American, and Western European officials that Russian President Vladimir Putin could deploy chemical, biological, or even nuclear weapons against Ukraine as his military continues to face setbacks and losses. While Putin reportedly believed that he would be easily and quickly take control of much of Ukraine when he launched the full-scale invasion on February 24th, the war has now entered its third month, with Kiev's government remaining firmly in place. Well, your military recruiter is going to start going around your schools again. Hey, you're exactly what we're looking for. Hey, do you want some free college? It's coming. Manchin has appeared in an advertisement, which we have the advertisement over on the Daily Wire side for us to read here. Joe Manchin appears in a campaign ad for GOP lawmaker up against Trump-backed challenger. From Carolyn Vakil. Manchin appeared in a campaign ad for Representative David McKinley, released on Friday as the congressman faces a primary matchup against Trump-endorsed challenger and fellow GOP rep Alex Mooney. I've always said that if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it, and that's why I oppose Build Back bullshit. For Alex Mooney and his out-of-state supporters to suggest that David McKinley supported Build Back Better is an outright lie, Manchin says in the 30-second ad. McKinley has always opposed reckless spending because it doesn't make sense for West Virginia. Alex Mooney has proven he's all about Alex Mooney, but West Virginians know David McKinley is about all of us. He finished. Well, he's a politician. He's out for David McKinley too, but I can't vote in that election, so I can be objective about that. I guess we'll have to go talk about what's happening over there and possible nukes. I found a map. I actually tried to go find an address so I could send it over to Vladimir Putin. Because I wanted to make sure that he knows exactly where DC is. If he does need to make force of some sort or another. So I said, and you know, obviously, of course, you can't reach him because of security concerns and he thinks that cyanide is everything. But I said, right here is Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is right here. Don't miss. Let's see. Manchin spokesperson Sam Runyon told The Hill that the ad speaks for itself when asked if the West Virginia Democrat's appearance in the ad was an indication that he was endorsing McKinley. Mooney, meanwhile, slammed the ad, saying in a tweet, "Further proof David McKinley is a complete and total rhino. Democrat Joe Manchin is endorsing him." Hitting back at Manchin's assertion that McKinley was against reckless spending, Mooney said in another tweet, "Joe Manchin and David McKinley both supported Joe Biden's $1.2 trillion non-infrastructure bill, but they also supported the sham January 6th witch hunt investigation against Donald Trump and his allies. Manchin even voted for Trump's impeachment." The Hill has reached out to McKinley's campaign for comment. Let's watch the ad, shall we?
I've always said if I can't go home and explain it, I can't vote for it. And that's why I oppose Build Back Better. For Alex Mooney and his out-of-state supporters to suggest David McKinley supported Build Back Better is an outright lie. David McKinley has always opposed reckless spending because it doesn't make sense for West Virginia. Alex Mooney has proven he's all about Alex Mooney. But West Virginians know David McKinley is all about us.
I'm David McKinley, and I approve this message.
And as usual, as I've always said, I would have to more deeply research both candidates before I could offer an opinion on both of them, especially for a primary. But, I mean, look at that mustache, dude. Look at that mustache. That is a powerful human being right there, who takes no shit. Jordan Zakarin tweets out with that, says, LOL, Joe Manchin brags about sinking Build Back Better in an ad he just cut for a Republican candidate for Congress. Democrats were never going to get this guy on board for any part of their agenda. Well, I don't know where Manchin is on most social issues, but I know that when he does something right, I'll pat him on the back. And when he does something wrong, I'll tell him he's a fucking moron. From New York Post. DHS expecting up at 18,000 migrants daily once Title 42 is lifted, according to Mayorkas. From Mark Moore. And you don't see a problem with this? As many as 18,000 migrants could cross the southern border daily once the Trump-era Title 42 health regulation is lifted, increasing the strain on federal officials already stretched thin trying to contain the crisis, Alejandro Mayorkas admitted on Sunday. Title 42 is a public health authority, so what we started to do in September of last year was prepare for its end. We're not projecting 18,000, but what we do in the department is we plan for different scenarios, so we're ready for anything, Mayorkas said on CNN's State of the Union. When Dana Bash pressed Mayorkas if the Department of Homeland Security would be able to handle that kind of surge, he said, the department would be prepared, but admitted the system would be under extraordinary strain. It is our responsibility to be prepared for different scenarios, and that's what we're doing. And we have incredibly talented and dedicated people. There's no question that if, in fact, we reach that number, that's going to be extraordinary strain on the system, the DHS secretary said. And that's why we plan to have prepared calls for a number of different actions, not just in the domestic arena, but also with our partners in the South, he continued. The CDC instituted Title 42, which allows border officials to immediately expel migrants trying to cross into the U.S. for public health reasons because of COVID in March of 2020. I'm actually for letting Title 42 end because, well, I don't want the expulsions to end because obviously that's a big deterrent for people coming over, but I don't want people to be using the pinko pox as an excuse for it. Because that gives all the reason in the world to come back and turn around and lock our asses back in our houses again. There's got to be a different way to raise up the expulsions for people trying to illegally enter this country. We shouldn't be using the pinko pox as an excuse to go back and do this, but of course, this also gives the ability for MSNBC to come out and say, Republicans are fine with blocking COVID funding to keep a racist policy. And its opinion, as everything else that comes from MSNBC is. From Hayes Brown, since the COVID-19 pandemic began, the vast majority of Republicans in Congress have viewed the public health measures taken to stop the disease's spread with suspicion, if not outright scorn, in response. We've seen the GOP members rally against the vaccine mandates, scoff at the idea of mask wearing, and at times even question the virus's lethality. There is, however, one public health response Republicans love despite no evidence that it had a major impact on the course of the pandemic. A rule known as Title 42, and now they're willing to risk federal funding for every other COVID response to protect it, or at least try to embarrass Democrats in the process. Earlier this year, the White House warned Congress that federal government was running out of money to pay for free COVID tests and vaccines. Republicans scoffed and demanded receipts for how the past COVID money had been spent, a request that caused additional pandemic funding to be left out of the major spending package Congress passed in March. Last month, Senator Romney and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer announced they'd come to a deal to provide $10 billion in supplemental funding, and that is of your money again, for pinko pox prevention and treatment efforts. Half that money would go towards the development and purchase of therapeutics, which means it would go into the pockets of Big Pharma, potentially eliminating the need for future vaccine and mask mandates, Romney said in a statement at the time. Schumer said in a statement that while the package didn't include the $5 billion in international COVID aid Democrats wanted, it would nonetheless give the federal government and our citizens the tools we need to continue our economic recovery, keep schools open, and keep American families safe. But as you see up at the top, Under the Trump admin, the CDC implemented public health rule, which allowed border officials to turn back anyone seeking to claim asylum in the U.S. The rule was developed with the theory that a clampdown on the border was needed to stop the spread of the infectious disease. About 4,000 migrants crossing the border to seek asylum are immediately turned back every day thanks to the rule. A number of that is expected to increase if Title 42 is lifted and prompts more migrants to attempt the crossing. Well, we do have remain in Mexico, so they shouldn't even be making to the border to begin with. But look for consistency in this administration. But again, this is just another chance for MSDNC to come out and tell you, the Trump admin is racist. Look at how racist they are. From Jezebel, of all places. I have never, I don't think, used Jezebel as a source. But they're one of the only ones that are covering this. And they're covering this because they want you to be panicked about it. But I'll let you know why I covered it in just a moment. Planned Parenthood has quietly stopped providing abortions in Georgia and Alabama. Based from Susan Rincunas. Planned Parenthood quietly stopped scheduling abortions this month at its clinics in Georgia and Alabama and canceled some existing appointments due to what it said were staffing issues at the Southeast affiliate. The organization said the change is temporary, but it did not say when it would resume care. In the meantime, the clinics are referring people to other providers based. We have elected to scale back some of our services across the affiliate while we onboard new staff at our health centers. At the executive level, the spokesperson said in response to questions from Jezebel, which were probably,
Tell us why you're stopping this. Come on, tell us why you're doing this. You hate women, don't you fucking hate women. Tell us why you're stopping this.
That is probably the questions from Jezebel. This is a temporary change, and we expect to again be operating at full capacity by the end of the month. There are 2 days left in the month, and that does not appear that abortions will resume in that time frame. Robin Marty, Director of Operations at West Alabama Women's Center in Tuscaloosa, told Jezebel in a statement that WAWC has been trying to cope in recent weeks with an influx of patients after Planned Parenthood canceled their appointments. The Deep South is one of the most difficult regions to find a provider to work in, and we understand how very lucky we are to have someone local to provide abortions 5 days a week. This discontinuation of abortion services has definitely impacted our own staff, who have already been working extra hours to meet the influx of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas patients, and are now adding the patients who have had their previously booked Planned Parenthood appointments canceled on them. My clinic staff are exhausted, they're anxious, but they also remain completely committed to our mission. Make sure every person can obtain a legal abortion for as long as the courts allow. So, kind of based, kind of shitty still at the same time, because there's another place to just go back and bypass this. I still say I don't like the fact that the government is doing it. I really don't, because the government sucks at everything, which means that this will likely get overturned, and the market will flood with more and more abortions. And we do need to find a way to make our society less friendly to abortion, instead of relying on the government to do it. Speaking of abortion, this is a carryover from Friday. It lives on TikTok. Difficult to watch. This is how some people feel about aborted babies. Absolutely evil and sickening. Pay attention when they tell you what they really think.
Aborted babies being burned and then used for electricity? I'm sure
The real answer to that question is nobody really fucking cares, actually. You could bake them, fillet them, fricassee them, barbecue, roast. You could broil them, pan fry them. I do not care. And let's be honest here, if we could burn those suckers for actual, like, lights and power, I feel like we're on to something. You guys are so anti-solar. Here you go. It's a resource we're going to have no matter what. But I mean, really, though, this is what you guys are pushing now? They're burning fetuses for fuel? I mean, it's better than going into a landfill, though, right?
Aborted babies being burned and then used for electricity?
I think it's worth noting that I don't usually pre-watch these videos. I was not prepared for that. I have no words. I was not prepared for that speech. I need a moment after that one. Holy fuck. Wow. Wow. Okay, moving on. More base news to go cleanse our palate after that. The Washington Post. The border wall Trump called unclimbable is taking a grim toll. Since 2019, when it was raised to 30 feet along much of the border in California, the number of patients coming to UCSD Medical Center's trauma ward after falling off jumped fivefold to 375. Well, I understand that you're supposed to not turn people away, and I do appreciate that, by the way. I'm not going to be so heartless to say that, no, it's bad that you won't turn anybody away. No, I definitely appreciate the fact that you won't turn anybody away. But, I mean, let's be realistic here. Let's be absolutely 100% realistic when we look at this, when we see what's going on here, and remind you of the fact that this is the point, that the reason that it's 30 feet high to begin with. So Juan and Marco can look at the other side and say, yeah, I want to climb that. Yeah, I think we should stop. I mean, that's the point of having it that high to begin with. Yes, everybody knew that you could go get a bigger ladder and climb over the goddamn thing. But once you're on the other side, you're on your own, motherfucker. From the Washington Post. The border wall Trump called unclimbable is taking a grim toll. From Nick Miroff. Hold on. Or no, we're not watching that again. I can't do that one again. There you go, Sully. Enjoy. I hope you're not moving, not driving, so you can't be appalled by that. From the Washington Post, the border wall Trump called unclimbable is taking a grim toll. From Nick Miroff. In the trauma wards of the city's major hospitals, patients from the border have arrived every day with gruesome injuries. Skull fractures, broken vertebrae, and shattered limbs, their lower extremities twisted into deranged angles. The patients have fallen from new 30-foot segments of the president's border wall, a structure he touted as Rolls-Royce that can't be climbed. His admin built more formidable barriers in the San Diego area than anywhere else along the southern border, with miles of double-layer steel fencing, but that has not stopped more and more migrants from trying to scale it. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials say they do not tally deaths and injuries resulting from such falls. But new statistics published Friday by University of California and San Diego physicians in the journal JAMA Surgery provide one of the first attempts to measure the toll. Since 2019, the barrier's height was raised to 30 feet along much of the border in California. The number of patients arriving at UC San Diego Medical Center's trauma ward after falling off the structure has jumped fivefold to 375, physicians found. Falling deaths at the barrier went from 0 to 16 during the time, according to the report, citing records maintained by the San Diego County Medical Examiner. I never expected we would have to climb the wall, said Hector Almeida, the 33-year-old dentist from Cuba recovering this week from trauma at the UC San Diego Health. He fractured his left leg in a fall on Monday. Smugglers led his group to the wall with a ladder and told them to climb up and slide down the other side, said Almeida, who said he saw one woman fall and break both legs, an older woman with severe head injury. I would think that would be enough to say don't do it. And here's the other side of this. You're a dentist. Go to the port of entry. No, seriously. Go to the port of entry and come in that way. I mean, that's the same for the rest of you, but still, you're a dentist. The following incidents are a subset of the soaring number of injuries, deaths, and rescues occurring all across the southern border, where immigration arrests have reached an all-time high under President Biden. Migrants attempting to evade capture have drowned in the Rio Grande, died of exposure in South Texas and Arizona, and disappeared in the Pacific Ocean during smuggling attempts at sea. What's different is that the border wall is a man-made obstacle that poses a lethal danger and public health challenges where one did not exist previously. That's the point. That is literally the entire point of this. No, you're not going to stop every border crossing with a wall. And I've tried to explain that to ignorant MAGAs for 5 years. But there are going to be a lot of people out there who are going to look over this and say, "Hey, Pedro, I can't climb that, man. We can get up there, but how are we going to get back down, ese?" That's literally the actual point of having it up there. To have somebody look at it and say, "Man, it's not worth it. I'm going to go to port of entry and take my chances." Speaking of Trump, some more Trump news here from ABC. A judge rejects Trump's bid and $10,000 a day contempt fine. From Aaron Katersky. Former President Trump, in a sworn affidavit, said Friday he possesses no documents subpoenaed by the New York Attorney General's office, but the judge overseeing the case declined to end his contempt finding and the $10,000 daily fine. To the best of my knowledge, I do not have any of the documents requested in the subpoena dated December 1st, 2021 in my personal possession. And two, if there are any documents responsive to the subpoena, I believe that they would be in the possession or the custody of the Trump Organization, Trump's affidavit said. At all relevant times, I have authorized and continue to authorize the release of responsive documents to the Office of the Attorney General, Trump said in the document. The same document that contains the affidavit also contained a detailed review by Trump's attorney of the steps taken to look for the documents in question. But Arthur Engoron remained unsatisfied and denied Trump's motion to purge the contempt finding and the fine that accompanies it. They are trying to drain his money. Nothing that ever happens is going to be good enough for New York. Because they're not looking for documents. They know they can't do anything criminal to him. They are looking to drain his money at this point to make sure that he doesn't have the war chest to go back and run. So, there is that. And once again, it's an idea that I've said for a long time. It's the same thing I say with that moron Marjorie Taylor Greene and Madison Cawthorn and Trump himself. They know they can't beat these people at the ballot box. Which in Green's district, that's a little bit sad to me. But they know they can't beat these people at the ballot box. They know they can't primary them out. So the best thing they can do is to try to bar them from running. Whereas, I mean, with the presidency, that's between the RNC and the people of the country. That's a different one, obviously, altogether. I still don't agree with it. I still think the voters should have the decision of who makes it to the top of the primary. But like with Green and the hearing that they just had for that, which was literally nothing but an exploratory committee so they could get sound bites for advertisements. All that should have ever been from the beginning should have been between the Republicans, as for the primary side, between the Republicans of Georgia 14 and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and nobody else should be involved in that. And then once general time rolls around, it should be between all the people of Georgia 14 and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and nobody else should be involved. From Fox, Republicans accuse Mayorkas of discrediting legitimate criticism with disinformation board and demand info. Yeah, we're at 1984 levels again, from Kelly Laco. House Oversight Committee Republicans are demanding information from Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas after the agency announced a new disinformation board saying that it was creating to discredit legitimate criticism and shows the Biden admin is weaponizing the department. Mayorkas announced that the DHS created a disinformation governance board to combat online disinformation during his testimony Wednesday before the House Appropriations Subcommittee on Homeland Security. Nina Jankowicz, who has previously served as a disinformation fellow at the Wilson Center, will head the board as executive director. I didn't even put anything up today about her, but apparently she's a fucking nut job too. The goal is to bring the resources of DHS together to address the threat, Mayorkas said during the hearing, adding the department is focused on the spread of disinformation in minority communities ahead of the 2022 midterm elections. You can only tell the truth, and the government will decide what the truth is. Man, oh man, is that dystopian. I didn't like it when the fucking Bushes were doing it, and I sure as fuck don't like it now. Holy shit. Oversight Committee ranking member James Comer organized a letter Friday to Mayorkas, obtained exclusively by Fox News Digital, to conduct oversight on the new board and continued efforts within the Biden admin to suppress free speech and discredit legitimate criticism as misinformation. All 19 House Oversight Republicans signed the letter, and the only difference and the only problem with this is if Jeb was doing this, all 19 of those House Oversight Republicans would be calling you a pinko commie, an anti-American, if you oppose this. The lawmakers allege that Biden admin has perpetrated demonstrably false claims, including on the Hunter Biden laptop story that Border Patrol agents were whipping Haitian migrants and other false narratives regarding the crisis on the southern border. Yeah, but see, that's disinformation that makes their opponents look bad. So they're fine with that. So that's what we see coming up with that. Let's grab one from the Blaze. Republicans vow to eradicate Biden's disinformation governance board. Boebert said that it's a Stalin-level DeSantis warns you cannot have a ministry of truth in this country. Well, I hope they do. But it's been to my experience with government officials, especially in Congress, that instead of getting rid of things like a ministry of truth, when they turn around and come back into power, they use it to their own advantage instead. And that's why I think this is a bad idea. From Paul Saka. Republicans have come up swinging against the Biden admin's newly announced Disinformation Governance Board. DHS announced that it had created a new government entity to tackle online disinformation, especially on key topics of elections, pinko pox, and the war in Ukraine, and the immigration crisis at the U.S. southern border. However, Republicans fear the new board will attempt to stifle free speech. Several GOP politicians immediately railed against President Biden's Disinformation Governance Board, and some have vowed to dismantle the entity. Numerous Republicans have labeled the new board as a Ministry of Truth, referencing the Department of Propaganda in George Orwell's dystopian book, 1984. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy proclaimed the same party that spent years promoting the Russian collusion hoax suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and equated parents to terrorists, believes it has credibility to control your speech. Biden must immediately abandon his plan to create an Orwellian Ministry of Truth. Now, it is important to note when you look at this, that this agency doesn't have any teeth, per se. They don't have because it's not congressionally appointed, they don't have the legislative authority to come back out and issue a fine, make an arrest, or otherwise deprive you of your life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. This is not going to be a criminal thing, but this is going to be an advisory thing, an advisory panel for the government to come down to big tech and tell them, their lapdogs, this is what you need to do to make us look better. This is what you need to censor. This is what we call the disinformation. They get to be the deciding factor of what is true and what is not. And if that's not dystopian to you, if that's not scary to you, I don't know what would be. The government colluding with private companies to center all the power back into the government's hands. That's fascism. And that's scary as shit. It was scary when the Bushites did it, and it's scary now. But it's kind of funny to me that Rubio and Crenshaw are the first ones to come up and talk against it, and Stefanik, for that matter. Because those will be the first people who want to go back and weaponize this, to go back and use it in the other direction. From Sky News, Bill Gates warns of an even more transmissive and more fatal coronavirus variant. No author given. The coronavirus pandemic is far from over, and Bill Gates has warned, saying that there would still be a variant which is even more transmissive and is even more fatal. Yes. The one evolutionary thing that viruses have done throughout history is kill off their reserve host. We haven't seen the worst of it, he said in an interview. While not wanting to be a voice of doom and gloom, the risk of a more virulent variant emerging is way above the 5%. The Microsoft co-founder and philanthropist told the Financial Times. We're still at risk of this pandemic generating a variant that could be even more transmissive and be even more fatal, he said, adding that longer-lasting vaccines which block the infection are urgently required. Gates, one of the world's wealthiest people, has written a book called How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. Yeah, see, as I said before when we were talking about Aaron Rupar, I'm not going to take my medical advice from the Microsoft co-founder. I'm not going to take it from Substack journalists. I'm not going to take it from Elon Musk. I will decide what is best for my body, and sometimes with the help of a doctor on top of it. But I'm not going to take any advice from any of these people in the mainstream media. Fuck that. From the LA Times. California promised to close its last nuclear plant. Now Newsom is reconsidering. Of course he is, because adding another strain to his power grid is probably not going to end well for him. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. With the threat of power shortages looming and the climate crisis worsening, Governor Newsom may attempt to delay the long-planned closure of California's largest electricity source, the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Newsom told the LA Times editorial board Thursday that the state would seek out a share of $6 billion in federal funds meant to rescue nuclear reactors facing closure. So that's coming out of your pocket too. Money the Biden admin announced this month Diablo Canyon owner Pacific Gas and Electric is preparing to shutter the plant, which generated 6% of the state's power last year, by 2025. The requirement is by May 19th to submit an application or miss the opportunity to draw down any federal funds if you want to extend the life of that plant, Newsom said. We would be remiss not to put that on the table as an option. He said state officials could later decide whether to pursue that option, and a spokesperson for the government clarified that Newsom still wants to see the facility shut down long term. It's been 6 years since BG&E agreed to close the plant near San Luis Obispo rather than invest in expensive environmental and earthquake safety upgrades. But Newsom's willingness to consider a short-term reprieve reflects a shift in the politics of nuclear power after decades of public opposition fueled by high-profile disasters such as Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, as well as the Cold War. Nuclear plants are America's largest source of climate-friendly power, generating 19% of the country's electricity last year, almost as much as solar panels, wind turbines, hydropower dams, and all other zero-carbon energy sources combined. A recent UC Berkeley poll, co-sponsored by The Times, found that 44% of California voters supported building more nuclear reactors in the Golden State, with 37% opposed and 19% undecided, a significant change from the 80s and the 90s. So, there we are. There we have it. The nuclear power plant may be shutting down, but they're going to try to save it because, well, like I said, Newsom can't take another hit like that. From the Blaze. Got just a couple more here, then we'll do rules of acquisition and head out of here for the day. Liberals are furious that Politico referred to the vice president by her first name. It's racist and sexist. From Carlos Garcia. A popular news outlet referred to Vice President Harris by her first name in the headline, and many on the left are melting down with fury because they see it as disrespectful, sexist, and racist. The Politico article points out that Harris, who was tested positive for the coronavirus, received Paxlovid, a medication from Pfizer that is meant for people at high risk for progression to severe COVID. Given that Harris is non-symptomatic, it raised questions about the inequity in the access to medical treatments. Many on social media were offended that Politico would even question the rationale for providing medication to Harris, but others were even more incensed that the article referred to the vice president simply as Kamala. Well, I do it all the time, and they can get as outraged with me as they want, and, well, I just don't care. But this is where we are societally. They said Kamala, they're racist. From the Hill. Tennessee lawmaker on books he would object to. I would burn them. Dude, shut up. From Brad Dress. A Tennessee state lawmaker said that he would burn books taken out of school libraries during an exchange with another lawmaker who asked what he proposed doing with the objectionable texts. State Rep Jerry Sexton, a Republican representing the region in East Tennessee, made the remark during a session of the Tennessee General Assembly on Wednesday. During the exchange, State Rep John Ray Clemens, Democrat who represents Nashville, asked Sexton what he would do when he takes these books out of the library. What are you going to do with them? Clemens asked, according to a clip of the exchange shared on Twitter. Are you going to put them on the street, light them on fire? What are you going to do? Sexton responded that he doesn't have a clue, but I would burn them, he added. Let's watch.
Let's say you take these books out of the library. What are you going to do with them? You going to put them in the street? Light them on fire? Where are they going?
I don't have a clue, but I would burn them.
That's what I thought. Thanks, Mr. Let's say you take these books out of the library. What are you going to do with them? You going to put them in the street? Light them on fire? Where are they going?
I don't have a clue, but I would burn them.
That's what I thought. Thanks, Mr.
That looks like that was jump cut to me, so I would kind of like to see the full clip off of this. I think that I feel like there was more to this because, I mean, when we look back at this...
I don't have a clue, but I would burn them.
That's what I thought. Thanks, Mr.
But regardless, this is the one person who is in favor of burning books, and really honestly, people of Tennessee, get rid of that guy. Get rid of that guy. Oh, this should have gone all the way back with the Title 42 stuff. Let's read this one quick. Top Honduran official says mass migration to U.S. possible when Title 42 ends, stresses economic health. That's right, this was still archiving when I started. From James Levinson. With the end of the CDC public health policy of Title 42, the order that allows federal authorities to quickly deport migrants at the U.S. borders, citing the health pandemic, the Foreign Ministry of Honduras warns that it could lead to an increase in migration to the U.S. And that's not congressional Republicans saying it. That's not your racist tick MAGA guy out there saying it. That is coming from the Foreign Minister of Honduras. In an interview with Fox News, Honduran Foreign Minister Eduardo Enrique Reina discussed his recent meetings with officials in the Biden admin, plans on tackling internal corruption and issues of migration to the southern border. Fox News asked Foreign Minister Reina whether there was concern over mass immigration to the U.S. when Biden admin ends on Title 42. It will be possible. I think this is an issue that's been part of the worries, and they understand that many people internally, and with the different policies that the U.S. has to decide, he said. 14% of migrants who have been expelled using Title 42 originated from Honduras. The policy was put in place in response to the Pinko Pox pandemic in March of 2020. Already, over 100,000 migrants have been encountered from the Honduras since the beginning of the fiscal year, according to CBP data. The Biden admin posted that they would end Title 42 on May 23rd, but a federal judge in Louisiana blocked that order earlier this week. A main issue that we will have to work together with the Biden admin in order to provide some alternative to develop this possibility of all economic growth in Honduras, he said. So he is freaking out over the fact that he doesn't want... Excuse me. Don't breathe Bang Energy because you'll be coughing on it for the rest of your morning show. A main issue, the Hondurans don't want to lose their people because that loses their economic ability. They lose their wage class, their slave class, because they're all going to the U.S. to become a wage class and slave class here for a higher pay than what they're getting in Honduras. And a higher quality of life than what they're getting in Honduras. But even he is saying, yeah, we need to go back and do something about this because this is going to be a lot of people that are leaving my country. What do we do? All right, and the last one from the Daily Wire. The most horrific headline I have read in forever. Tropicana unveils limited edition cereal you can eat with orange juice instead of milk. From John Rigolizzo. Tropicana is introducing a breakfast cereal you can eat with your orange juice in the bowl. The juice giant announced that it's testing cereal that's meant to be eaten with orange juice instead of milk. Tropicana Crunch is advertised as the first cereal made for OJ, and it may be the last. Tropicana will be giving away free boxes through an exclusive website, Tropicana Crunch, beginning on National Orange Juice Day, May 4th, while supplies last. Prepare your mind and your cereal bowl for an unforgettable breakfast experience, Tropicana wrote on the cereal's website, advertising the experimental cereal as crispy and ready to get citrusy. Orange juice on cereal, the website continues. Some call it weird, some call it breakfast. We didn't even know it was a thing, but it turns out there are totally normal people amongst us juicing up their cereal bowls. You might be one of them. So, for those who are cereal curious like us, we made Tropicana Crunch. Cereal that's down to be drowned in OJ, honey almond clusters that are made to be spooned and sipped. A breakfast taste that we can all take together, because whether you hate it or love it, you won't know until you try it. Tropicana Crunch, it may not be for everyone, but it could be for you. Nope. Not doing it. Sorry. Not happening. I'm a little curious as to what it is and what the difference is and what they're doing with it, but I have no interest in trying this. I'm sorry. Alright, and we're going to head out of here for the day, but the last thing that we're going to do is one of the Ferengi rules of acquisition to see what it is that we learn about being ultra-capitalist this week. So we're in the 60s. We did the 69th rule of acquisition last week. Ferengi are not responsible for the stupidity of other races, talking about lawsuits and where people will go out to either try to do something that they are not mentally qualified to do and hope to get a reward for it, or deliberately break something to try to get a financial reward out of it. Today we move on to, because they do kind of skip around in canon, and we are using alpha and beta canon for this. In alpha and beta canon sources, we do not have a 70th, 71st, 72nd, or 73rd rule of acquisition. So we will move right on to the 74th rule of acquisition, knowledge equals profit. This one came to us from Voyager. I believe it was Janeway that said it, actually, when they encountered the Ferengi in the Delta Quadrant that had been stranded from Next Generation and were, at that point, taking over as the religious deities of a small planet that had been backwards at the time. Knowledge equals profit. And it does. The more you know about something, the more effectively you can do it, whether it be your good or service or the negotiation of somebody else's good or service. Either to be able to sell your product at a better price, or a price that nobody else can demand because nobody knows your good or product better than you, or service better than you do, or to be able to negotiate down because you know enough about the product that it is that you're buying. Lower cost still equal profit. I'm making a point when I do this program to read as much as I can from green check source verification. Again, I got criticized by that from Mr. Scott earlier in the live event that's already scheduled for the other show, for KTZed Redemption. He was in there telling me how he's blackpilled on my podcast because I only use mainstream. But realistically, a part of that is because, you know, just like what we say when we say pronouns in bio, opinion automatically discarded. Oh, you're using conservative brief, you're using this conservative blog, you're using this, you're using that. Well, your opinion is disregarded at this point. No, I take this, and I know it. I take some time and make sure that I know the laws of the U.S., the Constitution, the things that these people are breaking all the time, but also what the arguments are coming from when we use mainstream media, what the mainstream media is trying to tell you, so we can come back down and debunk the problems off of it. Because there is no free and open press. As we saw with this Correspondents' Dinner. Who was there? Fox, CNN, MSNBC, Trevor Noah, the president. The people who are taking marching orders from the president are there. As the president says, oh, I support a free and open press, man. Come on. That is my knowledge of my product. and in other goods and services that I provide, I also have a good knowledge of product and a good knowledge of working relations with the people around me, whether it be whatever industry I happen to be working in at the time. So something else to look at, something else to watch as we go, but definitely, knowledge equals profit. And the more knowledge I've gained, the more money I've earned. So more to see and more to watch with that as well. So absolutely, knowledge equals profit. Know more about the good or service you're providing. And if the person that you're providing your good or service to cannot raise your price on that, go find another customer. Another employer, another customer. But knowledge does equal profit. Let's head out of here for the day. I'm thinking with the sticker that Sully Blue has seen the video that I posted in chat, and is now disturbed by it. Where's the outro music? I have too many screens. I have no idea where all my stuff is. Alright, so thanks everybody who came by, chatted in the live chat, came by, hung out with us, came by to tell us what you thought about what the news was going on. Looks like we saw some new names and some people who might be over from the left side of the aisle as well. They're always welcome here. As long as, of course, they don't come back out and get nasty and name call, then, you know, that's the same thing. And we don't want our people to be nasty and name calling either, if you could, please. We are going to head out of here, though. If you're sticking around, stick around with us as we go and do some brief rating on Twitch. But, of course, we'll all be going over to the Daily Ignoramus. And they'll be starting up in just a couple minutes, so we will see you there as well. But, you know, we still build the community by going off and doing a raid as well, so we'll see what happens with that. Otherwise, come back and join us, 5:30 Central Time for KTZed Redemption. Tomorrow morning, 7:30 a.m. Central Time for more Contemporary. We will see you at the next episode. We will see you in the next chat, and we will see you next time. Join the Discord, join the Twitter, come back and continue the conversation. And until then, I am Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care. Don't breathe bang. We'll see you next time.